Welcome to Catch Her Spark with Jen Maldonado. These are conversations with women who are building meaningful careers, stepping into leadership, and designing life on their own.
Hi, everyone. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Melissa Cabello, and she's special because, her whole career started with a question a
Mhm.
little girl asked her grandfather on a sidewalk that didn't exist. And his answer broke her heart. It also built her entire life's work. Can you imagine? Your conversation with your grandparents changed your life. And Melissa grew up in San Antonio in the West Side, in a part of the city that didn't get the same things other parts did. And you know what that means. So as a little girl, she asked her grandfather why their street has no sidewalk. And he told her simply that nobody cared enough about people like them to build one. So she was so furious and she never stopped being furious about it. And she just turned it into an entire career. And here's what most people don't know about her. Years into her time on city council, people urged her to run for a state legislature seat and a move most will call a promotion, but she turned it down. She wanted to stay home doing the work that was easy to overlook until it's gone, right? The sidewalks, safety, the small things that decide whether a neighborhood feels cared for. So she takes this furious moment and turn it into her life work. Can you imagine that? Serving the people. And another fun thing about her that I love is in 2024, she took her biggest risk yet, giving up a seat she loved to run for mayor, hoping to become San Antonio's first Latina mayor. And who knows, she didn't win, but she might try it again. I just love her courage, her passion, and how she make a problem part of her life's career to just solve it and serve her community. So welcome, Melissa. How are you today?
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. I'm fantastic. And thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I mean, it's a pleasure. Your story, Melissa, I just feel very inspired. And I think a lot of women in the political world, sometimes they shy away because they don't have the courage to go
Yeah.
for it. And it can start with a simple problem like a sidewalk. So tell me about this. What happened? Like when you're talking to grandpapa?
Yes, yes. Well, so I'm a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and my grandparents were very big in my life. You know, in a lot of Latino communities, you're also raised by your aunts and uncles and your grandparents. And my mom's parents specifically were really I was very close to because we lived a block away from them. So I'm walking with my grandfather one day in his neighborhood, and we're walking. He's walking on the street, and I'm walking in the grass. And I remember as a little girl, kind of kicking at the grass, and I looked up at my grandfather and said, why don't you have sidewalks in your neighborhood? And he looked down at me and I can see his face now saying to me, they don't care about us, Mija. They don't want us to have the things that other people have. They leave us behind. And in that moment, as a little girl, I didn't really understand what he was saying, but I knew that it made me furious, like you said. It lit a spark in my heart that to this day burns. And it makes me emotional because of course I no longer have my grandfather, but he inspired me that day in a way that I didn't even understand. So fast forward, I was very, very grateful to work hard and get to go to college and go to law school. And I'm practicing law. I'm a disability attorney. And one day I hear about something called the Latina Leadership Institute. And a lot of times women, we don't think that we have done enough to be able to do to kind of take the next step. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to try to be part of this organization. And I did. And in that class, I met 30 other women or so who were kind of in the position I was. They were coming up in the world, right? But also still had that imposter syndrome, still weren't sure, what do I have, what do I not have? And in that class, I decided to run for city council in the very area that I grew up in. So I was really, really honored. And a funny story, a lot of people don't know this. I decided to run in 2017 and there were 8 candidates. I was the only woman. And I remember thinking of being in this room with these 7 other men and thinking, well, I don't know if I've got what I need. At that point, I'm a mom, a wife, a mother, an attorney. I have an MBA, I'm practicing attorney, I have my own practice. And still in my brain, I'm thinking, I don't know if I have enough to be a representative of my community, right? But I look across at these individuals that were I was running with, and I mean, there was people that didn't have half of what I had. So it was still hard to kind of get through it. But that time I made a runoff, and I actually lost that race by
Mm.
less than 400 votes, and it was heartbreaking. But I knew the very next day I got up and I went and took all my signs down, and I knew I was going to do it again. So I ran again in 2 years, and thankfully I won. So persistence pays off, right? When you really, really want something, be persistent about it. But I won in 2019. I was able to serve for 6 years, and it really was the greatest honor of my life. I put my faith first, my family second. And after that came the people that I represent because they trusted me. They trusted me to help them. And every day I got to help people like my grandfather. And I'll point to areas of San Antonio like Edgewood who didn't have sidewalks, who didn't have streetlights, the most basic city services they didn't have access to. So it felt really gratifying to be able to do that for people that were like my grandfather. And, he wasn't around to see me get elected, but I do believe that him and my other grandparents understand that I'm doing them right, in my community service.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is amazing. I mean, think about this. You take this inspiration and you walk into a room full of men, right? City
Yep.
hall chambers, I guess,
Yes.
negotiating tables,
Yes.
political circles, and you start feeling the imposter syndrome. And even
Yeah.
after years of experience and multiple election wins, right?
Yeah.
Do you still feel that there's a challenge inside of you when you come to the rooms?
There is. It's a lot less. I've learned to, your words are powerful, right? I've learned to stop talking myself down. I've learned to stand up straight. I'm 5 foot tall. Not only am I a woman and I'm Latina, but I'm small as well. So I stand up big and tall as I can, and I make sure that I take up space in a room. And that has helped me to build that confidence, kind of fake it till you make it, right? I wasn't comfortable taking up space. I wasn't comfortable talking a lot. I just wanted to get the work done and keep my head down and work. But that's not in politics. You've got to be outspoken, and you've got to really kind of command that energy. So I really had to work at it, and I don't feel it as much. But I will admit that there are days I get up in front of a room full of people to speak, and I get a little anxious. Right? I remember that I'm just little Melissa from the West Side. Right? And there's a beauty in that too. You should always remember, keep your feet on the ground and where you come from, and remember that that little 7, 8 year old girl that didn't understand the world, back then. And I'm still learning. We're always learning, but I do sometimes feel it. But I have really worked very hard to accept my place in the world, accept my leadership skills, accept my education, my experience. And that's not always easy for women to do because a lot of times we're taught to make ourselves smaller, to be demure. And even though I had my mom's long passed away, but she was very outspoken and powerful in her own right. And I still, the world kind of teaches you to be smaller. So I had to fight that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, fight that. I mean, it's so challenging. The reason why I ask, it's what I have noticed in a lot of women who has a voice, who are representing their community, who are in leadership positions. A lot of time, they feel that imposter syndrome, no matter their achievements.
Yeah.
And I noticed that in women, mostly in women. I have asked a lot of friends who are males and counterparts, and that conversation doesn't come. So you have since become the person other young Latinas look to as proof it's possible.
Mhm.
What do you wish someone had told you about that feeling before you even run for office?
Yeah. And there's so much that I wish I've grown so much, I matured so much from being in office because it's very hard. As much as I love the work, you can't please everybody, and you'll have people attacking you. And what I wish that somebody had said to me and that I understood and internalized before I ran for office was a couple of things. Number one, to trust myself, to trust my own gut, my own instinct. As after all, I grew up in the area that I represented. Secondly, was that like I'm enough. right? Everything that I have, even if I didn't have the education or whatever, I still have the experience. I still grew up there, that I'm enough. And I say that, I wish somebody had said it, but I also wish that I understood it and internalized it and really kind of went into office just, going hard at it. Because I did take some time to learn, and I'm an observer. I want to learn and understand and read the book on it and do all those things before I do it. And it took a little time to get going. But once I understood that, I there was no stopping me, right? As with most women. I mean, we once we're comfortable in the space, we take over every time, right? And
Yes.
and I'll tell you that sometimes it was difficult because there are people that don't want women to be in any kind of power. And I would get criticized for, I like bright colors. I wear bright lipstick. I wear my big earrings sometimes, right? And there were people that would, to my face, say that lipstick's too bright. You shouldn't wear that. Those earrings are too big. Then, of course, you have social media where they would attack my appearance. Where my male counterparts, they don't get that. We would go. Another fun fact, the first time I was elected to office was 2019. And it was the very first time that the San Antonio City Council had a majority elected women. So
Wow.
it's a majority women that were elected to council. And that was really, really a big deal. And I remember the media made a big deal out of it. And I love that. I think the second important part was that every one of us also grew up in the areas that we currently represented.
Wow.
So that was really powerful too. But we would show up and, just to the nines, we dress up. I owe my community respect. And so I would always dress as nice as I could and make sure that everything was on point as much as I could. Where my male counterparts would show up in t-shirts and fishing shirts. And still the women would get criticized, not the men. They show up in jeans. But my lipstick is too bright, right? So it was hard to have that. You would have people come and speak to us and call me Melissa and call the other women by their first names, but the men they would call councilman whatever. They would call them their last name, right? So why aren't we afforded that same respect to be called Councilwoman Cabello Havrda, right? Why I don't mind. Melissa's my name. I love people calling me Melissa, but if you're going to be consistent, I mean, if you're going to call the men something and not the women, I mean, be consistent, right? So that was difficult sometimes to take because it was just a lack of respect for the sole reason of being a woman in a place of power.
Yes, and Melissa, that goes everywhere.
Mhm. Yeah,
Council, man, council
absolutely. Yeah.
women.
No,
Let's
no, call me
start
Melissa,
calling
please.
it.
Call me Melissa. I never minded it. It's just it bothered me when they would call the men by their title, but not the women. It was just a lack of respect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean it's and the reason why I highlight that because it happens across board in
Yeah.
every profession.
Yeah.
I remember myself when I used to do engineering. This is the kind of things I will do.
Sure.
Nothing, even my glasses and barely earrings,
Yeah.
so they can see me as a person, not as a woman.
Yeah.
And being a woman in this position has its powers too, right? I have a friend that she used to say, when you are in your female power, that's when you can attract the biggest help. Don't lose your female power. And that doesn't mean to be rough or anything. It just means to ask for help and show them that you have the skills and the competency, and yes, be aware that a lot of them were raised in the traditional old ways. So
Right.
how do you navigate that world? It's very interesting. So
Yeah.
tell me about some of the things that you have used to navigate the traditional way, right? Because it exists. It doesn't
It does.
matter.
It does.
Yes, but it does.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I love that. I'm gonna take that. That's my takeaway from today is like kind of lean into your female power because that's a real thing, and it's something that we all possess inherently. And I think I'll tell you that one of them is what I mentioned earlier was taking up space. Again, I'm small, so I wear high heels, and I literally will move around the space and take up space because again, my counterpart sometimes it's like on an airplane, right? Like they squish you in and you felt like, and I would kind of push back, right? Now you get criticized of being, they call you bad names and the B word and stuff like that. But then, okay, that's what it is. But I'm owning my female energy, as you say, right? Another thing though was very much when they try. I think my heart is always wants to push back on injustice, right? So perceived injustice to my community, but even sometimes to myself. So when they would try to make me smaller, and some of my counterparts, mostly the male counterparts, would try to make you smaller. You're not as important. You represent the West Side or whatever it was. I would always have to remind myself, my title is the same as yours. My vote is equal to yours. And I would have to kind of self-talk, into that. But another thing was, and this is really kind of sad in a way, but the biggest criticism actually came from other women who have kind of bought into that stereotype that I shouldn't be on council. I had a woman one time come up to me at the poll sites when the election was going on, say, how are you going to feed your kids dinner when you're at city council? How are you going to get your kids to school? And I was like, man, number one, my husband cooks, I don't, so he's going to make them dinner. And I was really thankful I was able to take my kids to school every day. But here I am answering her question. She walks 10 steps away and asks my male opponent, none of that. She asks him policy questions. And it was like, hey, man, the stereotype. But I also do the things that you said, right? I don't, like, I'm an attorney. When I go into court, I don't necessarily wear the big earrings and the bright colors. I also use my female power as a collaborator. That's what we do. That's one of our inherent talents as a, generally speaking, is to try to figure out, okay, everybody's fighting. What are the common things, right? Let's figure out how to collaborate, how to work together, how to solve that problem. I also think that we have not everybody, right? But we have an inherent kind of a lesser ego. So we're willing to say, okay, I was wrong about that. But you were wrong about this, right? And kind of bring everything together. And I think that's a talent that women have that is maybe the most important talent we have. Is to kind of like put your ego to the side. Sometimes it gets in the way. I mean, it does, but put it to the side, look around, scan the room. How do we figure out this issue, this solution, and then being able to present it in a way that's not threatening to men or other people in the room. I mean, sometimes you have to get aggressive, right? Sometimes you have to be assertive about it. But I always try to come from a place of collaboration and let's work together. And when you get the pushback is when then you have to push back. So I think that's an inherent woman energy.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And to your point, it happens all around us. But if we
Yes.
can use our magic as women, right?
Yeah.
Collaboration is what give us the power to make things happen, regardless any resistance.
Right.
And I know that a lot of women say they want more women around them, but competition and gatekeeping still happen,
It
even
does.
between women, as you mentioned.
Sure.
So, how do you make sure the women in your circle are actually lifting each
Yeah.
other up instead of quietly competing?
Yeah. So I mentioned the Latina Leadership Institute, that I took that class it's like a leadership class in 2016, I believe. And I'll tell you that I thought I'm going to walk into a room with 29 women and like, I don't know how this is going to work out, right? But that is really where I learned that there's enough for all of us. And that when we collaborate together, when we work together to boost each other up, we always do better, not just for the person you're helping, but for yourself. But I had to learn that. I had to have those experiences because I didn't have those experiences before, and I did feel competitive. And I understand now. I'm a very competitive person, period. But I understand now, especially when you're competitive with women, that does nothing but detract from both of you. And it's also stressful, and it's also, not good for your soul, right? Your sanity. So the more I could work together with women, the better we both did. Everybody's probably heard this, but I make it a very conscious practice when you're in a room and it's happened over and over and over and a woman says something that's a good idea or whatever it was, she says something, and then right after that a man says the same thing and everybody recognizes the man. I will always raise my hand and say, you know what, Jen just said that. That's great, Jen. I love that you got people to see your way. I always stop the conversation and point out who said it. And I noticed the more I did that, the more I saw other women doing it. So I think even women that are maybe hesitant and will be competitive with women, when they see it in practice and see, hey, we're both better off, for doing that, then that's the only thing that's going to change it. There are definitely women out there that still want to compete with you. There are definitely women that still think that there's only this much for a woman, and absolutely not. We have it's abundant. The power, the leadership, the opportunities are abundant for women, and they only multiply when we help each other.
Yes, I love that. And it's interesting because it has happened to me being sitting in the table where I will say an idea and the man next to me
Yep.
repeat it. And to your point, it's like, okay, now that he summarized my idea and
Yes.
I understand myself
Good.
for that, now that he summarizes my idea, I think he brought a point I was missing.
Yeah.
And I will honor what he said, right? But to your point, it's like, it's exactly the same thing I say. What?
Yes.
And I'm like, what I was trying to do is figure out, is it because he's a male or did he say it differently?
Yep.
So, yeah.
I had the same, I second guess myself. Like, did I say that weird? Like 99% of the time, no. I call it people's programming, right? Like they're taught by the world to listen to the man, the person that's not of color, the really tall person, whatever it is, right? Like, so even women will sometimes say, oh, you said that. And so I think it is really powerful, and it's crucial that we help other women and show them, hey, she said that. That was a good idea. I love that. And I love what you said too, to give them their credit, maybe for adding to it, but not still the idea, right?
Yes, yes. I have seen it so many times where men go just get the women's boy and make it their own. And it's like, is that an honor? But are you going to give the credit to the women?
Right. No.
So,
And
yeah.
I think I've seen it happen. It actually happened this week, where that happened to me, and a man kind of took the exact same thing. And I was like, did he hear me say it? It's almost like they didn't realize where it came from. It just popped into their head, so they said it, right? So after the meeting, I asked him, and he was like, man, I didn't even hear you say that, Melissa. And I was like, all right, it was a pretty specific thing, but I think it's education, and I also think having those conversations, like not you don't have to come at somebody and say, how dare you steal my idea, or how dare you, just say, hey, did you hear me say that? And again, coming from a place of collaboration and wanting to work together and grow.
Yeah, I love that. Ooh, there you go. Collaboration. So if you could teach every woman in leadership one rule for how to treat the women around her,
Mhm.
mentee, peer, competitor, what will that
Yeah.
rule be?
It's going to sound kind of trite, right? But it really, I think it all boils down to respect. If you respect the other women in the room the way sometimes you'll respect men, I think there's a lot of power in that, right? Acknowledging the things that they're saying, not trying to bring them down so that you're up here. Because I believe that when you try to bring somebody else down, you both come down, right? But respecting their viewpoint, respecting um, their knowledge or expertise, their education, whatever it is, because a lot of people don't, and we kind of owe it to each other as women to be the ones that lift each other up and respect each other. That and again, that's something I had to learn. I didn't. That wasn't inherent in me. I really had to learn that. But really listening and being thoughtful with other women is, I think, a big part of respecting them and respecting our place in the world, because we all know that we take on the jobs that nobody else wants to do, right? Or nobody else can do. And I mean, even when we're talking about our home lives, right? We take over, we're the secretaries, the doctors, the everything, right? So that kind of stuff, I think, as long as we're continue to lift each other up and respect that about each other, then we can only go up.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Respect
Yeah,
for the human beings, respect
yeah,
for life decision and choices. And
yeah,
Melissa, one of the things that I noticed too is that you have been fighting out there for women rights
yeah,
in different aspects and changing policy, especially in the state of Texas. Can
yeah.
you tell us what are some of those things that you're very passionate about that you're making changes,
Yeah.
especially for women?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I do feel really strongly about city government taking care of the basics, lighting, streets, sidewalks, all of the things that when you open your front door, that's the city. They take care of everything you see is what the city takes care of. And all of that is crucial. However, there are some times when women are being left aside, or different people of different cultures or ethnicities are being left aside, and that's where kind of my little spark kicks up again because it's an injustice, right? Recently, the state of Texas came down on women regarding reproductive rights, right? There was a Supreme Court ruling, and then Texas kind of took it the extra step. And me as a community leader, as somebody who represented my not just the west side of San Antonio, but really the all of San Antonio. When you represent one side, you represent everybody. I started to hear from women over and over and over. I'm scared. What if this happens? What if that happens? I'll tell you that I have a really, really good friend. She's also an attorney. She became pregnant and very quickly figured out that the pregnancy was a danger to her body. She went to her doctor, who said, I cannot terminate this pregnancy because I'll get arrested. So
Yeah.
my friend, because she had means, was able to travel to a different state and take care of her reproductive organs, right? And thankfully, she became pregnant a couple more times after that, and had a couple of children. But in that moment, she had what was essentially, I'm sorry, it's very morbid, but was essentially a fetus that was no longer alive that the doctor would not extract. And that was a
Wow.
danger to her life. Women have died because of that, right? So I hear this, and I hear a lot of other stories like this across the city, and it infuriated me. So I went to the city and said, hey, we've got to do something about this because there are a lot of women that don't have the means to travel to receive reproductive care, basic reproductive care. And so after a lot of fight and a lot of public discourse and really talking to my community and understanding what they were looking for, we were able to allocate some funds to help young women, or really not just young women, but women who didn't have the means to travel to get that reproductive care. A lot of organizations got behind me and started to call it reproductive justice, and I appreciate that. At the end of the day, it was about women's health. And
Yeah.
no matter where you are kind of on that political spectrum, it didn't matter because it was about women's health. And the
Correct.
state of Texas at the time, I felt like was attacking women's reproductive health. So we were able to do that. And I felt really good about that. That the city didn't want to be involved. They didn't think it was really their place. But at the end of the day, we represent our constituents not only for their streets and drainage and all of that, but also their rights. So I feel really good about that, and just hope that that continues as we move forward because the state is again trying to come back and try to take rights away from cities. So a lot of it is in reaction to some of those things, but we still have to fight.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I think that sometimes people feel powerless to manage certain situations because the problem is big. It will
Yeah.
be hard to move that elephant in
Yes.
the room. But
Yes.
sometimes is that a small problem solving ways to find how, okay, all of this is happening. This is going to take time to get to a point that we take care of the human, right? How
Yeah.
can we do this? So you put your passion, your ideas, your resources, and bring all of that together to find a solution, which is, bringing funding
Yes.
um, to find a solution while the big elephants decide to make the changes. So
Yes. Yeah.
yes, I applaud that
Thank
because
you.
it shows people like you can solve
Yeah.
problems. You just need to figure a different way because sometimes there is a big elephant and you cannot go through it, but there can be another way. So thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for doing
Yeah. I
that.
mean, I love that. I mean, you can't always change the world, but you can change maybe little parts of it that help people. And that's really was always my focus. Was my motto was to do good, but get it done, right? Not just talk about it, get it done. So it really did drive me a lot.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. There's so many areas in where other people, women, men can
Yeah.
do things like that.
Sure.
And yes, and meet the goal. Meet the
Right.
goal
Yes.
as a start
Yeah.
point. Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. So now, Melissa, you have been bringing something interesting, and I'm going to ask you this from the personal side. I think that funding, especially for women, women's projects, women's personal life, women retirement, has been always that it's hard for women to tap into it.
Mhm.
What are some of your tips or advice when it comes to the economical status for
Yeah.
women, building wealth, building for retirement? How have you prepared for that besides your work, right? Because we have our work, but in today's economy is very hard just to survive. Are
Yeah.
you investing? Are you preparing financially? How are there funds available for other women? I don't know, something
Yeah.
around that area.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important. I think that the main thing is we have to psychologically understand that we are important and that we need to take care of our futures. We get so involved in day-to-day life and taking care of our families, whether it be our children, our spouses, or sometimes our parents, or even our communities, right? We get so involved in that, and we give this advice about different things and taking care of yourself, but don't always do it for ourselves. And that includes things like self-care, sure, all of that, but it also includes financial stability, right? I mean, you have women who are in, not just women, but men and women who are in domestic violence situations who can't leave because they are financially bound to their partner. So I think that the key to all of that is financial literacy. I really believe that they should have that. I think some high schools do have that, but they should have that in a curriculum of public education. You should have a financial literacy class, and you should also specifically have financial literacy for women. Not that financial literacy is different, but also just kind of psychologically understanding that you are just as important. You're the money that you make is just as important as any that your spouse makes, or your partner, whoever it is. And so I think that financial literacy classes are key to invest in yourself in a lot of different ways, but specifically financially is crucial to your future. I mean, I used to joke around that as an attorney that I'm never going to retire. My retirement plan was to die at my desk, right? Because I love the work I do, but the reality is, as I get older, I do not want to die at my desk. I want to enjoy my life, right? So I think that as difficult as it is to put just a little bit aside as you can, it's so important. And there's so many different ways, taking this class and talking with financial experts to understand how your money can, even a small amount a week or a month, can compound and really help your future, and not just your own, but you being financially stable makes you're able to help everybody else when you're stable in a lot of ways. So I think there's a lot of keys to that, but the number one thing is to value yourself and to take yourself just as seriously and know that you're just as important as anybody else you're trying to help.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think I'm going to connect the dots too, because as you mentioned, when you started, you are enough to have financial stability, enough to take care of yourself, right? And gain that options and
Yeah.
freedom. So, because a lot of the times I notice too, to your point, and it breaks my heart every time I see domestic violence and the women still there because they don't have the financial
Yeah.
stability or the courage to go out. They don't know what to do after the fact. Make them live this lifestyle like they're not enough. And it's a big problem, especially across the women's community. And I think that is very important. So thank you for tapping into that,
Absolutely.
Melissa.
Yeah. Our
Yeah,
mental health is just as important as all the
yeah.
other health issues that we need to take care of.
Yes, for sure. Melissa, are there any upcoming things for you that you want to share with the
Yeah.
world?
I know that y'all have heard that phrase. If you do what you love, you never feel like you work a day in your life. I never really understood that until I was in office because I felt every day like I was helping somebody, and I felt like I was kind of fulfilling my purpose. So now I haven't been in office for a year, and while I do enjoy kind of being a private citizen and not having to worry about, a lot of things, I do really miss that level of helping people. I do so in my practice, my disability practice, and I feel good about that. But I will tell you that there is a future for me politically. But I'm in no hurry. I'm not trying to grab at any seat. I'm going to wait and see what's the right seat for me. The community has to want me to do it, right? The first time I ran for office was people in my community asking me to do it. So they have to lift you up, right? You can't just do it because you feel like you want to do it. You have to have the right reasons. So I do think that there's a political future for me, but again, I'm in no hurry. I'm going to wait and see what the right place for me is, if ever. But for now, I'm enjoying helping my clients, of course, raising my family, rescuing little dogs all the time. That's like a fault of mine. But I really am enjoying private life. But I have to tell you that my heart is always being called back to public office.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that, I mean, the other day, it's sometimes it's challenging when you're running businesses
Yes.
and allowing your heart to step up because
Yeah,
sometimes they can contradict each other, right?
sure. Yeah.
But to your point, there's going to be alignment in that, between what is needed, how
Yeah.
you need to step up, how
Yeah.
your heart wants you to step up,
Yeah.
and your competence and capabilities. And I love the fact that you are navigating that graciously
Thank you.
and yeah, and showing women they can step in their power.
It doesn't always feel like that, but sometimes I look back on my life and think like, okay, I've done some stuff, right? But
Yeah.
I'm always kind of looking forward to what else can I do? So you have to also kind of reflect and on the good things that you've done in your life, right?
Yes, I love that. I love that, Melissa. Melissa, if people want to connect with you, what is the best way to do it?
So I can give you my email. That's the fastest way. My initials are MCH. So M like Mary, C like cat, H like Harry at lawmch.com. That's probably the fastest way, just because you have your whole life on your phone, right? And I really would love to talk with people, and I enjoy just sitting down for some tea and learning from folks too. But anything that I can help with and impart on other women, I'm very grateful to be able to do that.
I love it. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much for being so open with us. Tell us
Thank
about
you.
your journey, sharing with the entire community. I love that. And I'm looking forward to see what's next for you
Yes,
too.
ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Jen. I love talking with you. You're very easy to talk with.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You've been listening to Catch Her Spark with Jen Maldonado, where bold women lead the way. Ready to share your spark? Apply to be a guest at catchherspark.com/guest.